weather thing was a bit different because it was just the two of us kind of thing, and we were down there. I'm going to play a drinking game this time on the podcast, if that's okay. Every time my voice breaks, I'm going to take a sip of tea. And so that was one, so I'm going to take one sip of tea. Hang on.
I've got 11 and ginger on the go as well.
Good.
I've got straight gin, so I'm going to be really merry by the end of this.
Do you actually?
Joking. It was a joke.
So the slow weather stuff, we were staying in the studio that we were recording in, so I can't really remember. I mean, I can't really remember, Annie. Did we do fairly straight days, or did we end up going really late at night? I can't really remember.
We really, I don't think it was very straight. I think it was like we tried to do sort of 11 or 12 till 6, and then we'd get dinner and then kind of come back a lot of the time if other bands weren't in. But sometimes I think the sort of later night sessions were really productive, and especially after like possibly a wee drink or something, you sometimes got way more done. It was quite good.
Yeah, I always like, it's different when I'm producing other people or whatever, but if it's like my own stuff or things like slow weather, I always end up doing loads really late at night. Like, I think almost all, like a good 80% of both Catholic Action albums were probably done between the hours of 11 o'clock and 5 in the morning, which is really nuts. I mean, I've tried to sort my sleeping pattern a bit more this year, but yeah, I'm just a bit of a night owl. I always get into that kind of zone at like 11 o'clock. I get this burst of energy and focus much more so than I do during the day.
I do as well. Not maybe in the case of going till 5 in the morning. I'm definitely a bit I've got less stamina than that, but I'd say around 10, 11 p.m. That's probably the most awake I am all day. It's really, really weird, and then I can't sleep, and it just takes me all day to wake up.
I think it's I've been like sort of normal up until this point this year, but the past month I've just totally went back to my like night owl ways. So I've been working on those demos every night at like 11 until I get too tired, kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's the weather as well. It's just like the weather is such that you wake up in the morning at the moment and just go, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
Just so grey. But yeah, we love the weather. That's why we called the band. No, it's not.
I'm so glad you were saying that, because I was like, do I make this joke? Do I do it? Do I? No, I'm not going to. But you did it, so well done.
Thanks.
I think there's something about the night as well when no one else is awake, and it's that weird kind of creative isolation when there's like no distractions, and you can really just hone in on it.
Yeah. You don't feel like doing the dishes late at night. There's like a cut-off point. Like if you've not done the dishes by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, they're not going to get done. You know what I mean? You're not going to start doing the dishes at 11 o'clock.
Nah, I disagree.
Really? You're late night?
I always have to have all the dishes done before I go to bed, apart from maybe like a cup of tea or whatever, but like all the bulk of the main stuff, that's got to be done. I can't have dirty dishes sitting out before I go to bed.
Are you a dish man? Do you enjoy the dishes, or is it just a sort of, this needs done?
I think it can be quite therapeutic. Like if you stick on a podcast and you just do the dishes, it's like a tiny sense of accomplishment of having done something.
Yeah, I try and keep it up. My girlfriend encourages me to do that. She says you should do the dishes. You shouldn't leave dishes overnight. And I do try, and it does, like you said, it does give me an enormous sense of achievement when I wake up the next day and it's like, oh, I can just make breakfast. I don't have to do dishes. But if I've got this little room in my flat where I do a lot of my work, and we actually did some of the slow weather stuff in here. Like the final like keyboard parts, I think, and maybe some guitar parts. I can't really remember. We did do some stuff, and we mixed it in this little room. So I've got this thing where during the day, like, and I just, oh wait, my voice broke again. I'm gonna have some more tea. Hold on. Okay. I do this thing where like I just won't do any like work till in the evening because I feel like I have to do all these chores. Unless it's working with someone else, in which case I'll just work, normal hours.
It's true though. Yeah, I think. During the day or something though, if you're surrounded by mess or dishes, like maybe this is just quite an obvious thing, but it does just make you feel a bit anxious, and I think I do work better if I'm not having to worry about that kind of thing. And yeah, I agree with the cut-off. I think if you're in that sort of Netflix or music-y mode past about 9 p.m. You kind of don't want to do anything else, at least for me.
You can do music guilt-free at that time because you're like, well, no one's going to do the dishes at 11 o'clock. I'm not expected to do the dishes at 11 o'clock. I can sit and work on my stuff. I don't have to think about it.
The pressure's off.
Yeah.
Were you even going into the studio like overnight and stuff when you were? Where did you do this? Was it Chem 19 again? Was that where the Slow Weather EP was mostly done?
We done the Slow Weather EP down in London. Yeah, we just went. There's a studio that I work in down there quite a lot called Hermitage Works. I'd done some of the Catholic Action stuff there in the past, and I'd done some stuff with like Vault Disco and Medicine Cabinet and a couple of other people there in the past. And we just thought it would be good for us to just go away and just focus on it for a while. So we went down for like, was it 10 days or something like that?
Yeah, I think we had about 2 days off in the middle, but it was pretty much like full on most of that time. And I kind of lived at the studio a little bit for that time. But yeah, I think it was definitely worth it for, like you say, the immersion and also the analog sound. I think hopefully you can kind of hear that warm vintage thing. I don't know if I'm just overanalyzing it, but I think that I really like the sound of that anyway.
It was like an old Trident mixing desk that we recorded everything through, so sounds quite nice. Yeah, no, it's a nice studio. I think, Annie, you slept on a couch downstairs and I slept on a sort of really disgusting rollout mattress.
How do you switch off though if you're living in the same place that you're creating this thing? Are you not like kind of just immersed in it completely, and is it tough to kind of get a break from it?
The studio's right across from Finsbury Park, so we go to the park quite a lot, and there's some like nice pubs and stuff nearby. I mean, I quite like the like immersion thing for my own stuff. Like if it's something I'm doing, or even if it's an album. For instance, we done the Savage Mansion album Weird Country at that same studio in London, and we went down again for like 2 weeks, I think, and just didn't really do anything else apart from the album. So that it can be quite good if it's the right kind of project for it.
Yeah, I think as quite an introverted person, I think when I first got there, it was a really cool studio, but I think I was slightly intimidated, not just to be like in London, but just to be in like a brand new environment that I didn't know. But I think it was definitely one of the most intense experiences I've had, but also I think some of my favorite things have come out of really intense periods of time. So by which I mean, I think that you can hopefully hear the energy and hear the sort of commitment to it all in the record, because I don't know if it would have had that if we were just doing it over a few months, like back and forth. Like I think it is quite immediate.
Yeah, I think like the nature of the way we recorded it allowed the sound to develop in a way that it did. You know, like you said, Annie, I don't know if it would sound as cohesive if we did it, or I don't know if the sort of aesthetic of it would have been as intense. Not that it's like an intense sounding record, but it definitely has like a sonic stamp to it.
Yeah, all the raw stuff for sure was done, yeah, in the same place. And, you know, all the drums were done in quite a short space of time. So hopefully that's kind of cohesive.
Yeah, we done the drums in like 4 hours or something one afternoon.
What, for all 5 tracks?
Yeah, I'm a pro.
I was going to say, what was the structure of that 10 days like? Is it the first? Did you kind of were the songs pinned down when you got there? Or did you kind of give them a little bit of room to breathe and develop in the studio? What's your kind of first day when you're?
It was definitely they were not done. In that we had the songs definitely, and we were happy with them, but we definitely wanted to do the bulk of it there. I think, yeah, kind of experiment with sounds. And I remember like one of the tracks in particular, I remember it was kind of working, but both of us were a bit like, it's not quite there. And I think Chris like changed the frequency of it or something and made it really bassy and low and just took everything out of it. And suddenly it was working. And I think that was a good example for how a lot of it went. It was like just kind of working out what this was going to be. I think another time as well, I literally went out for 5 minutes to have some tea or something, and I came back in and Chris had like he'd written this like guitar solo and like la la la's and just this crazy big section, and I was just like, what is this? This is amazing. Like there's just lots of moments like that, I think.
What song was that for?
Great White Male.
Yeah, and then I think the song earlier with a big, we just chucked a big synth filter over the whole mix. I think was that. What was the name of that track, Annie?
I Want to Know. Yeah,
Want to Know,
Chris
yeah.
speaks producer and I don't, so please excuse my terminology.
It's good though. It's good. Yeah, we just slapped a big bloody synth filter on it and just kind of worked. But no, I think because again we were speaking about this to someone else the other day when we set out to do it. Like we never really had like I mean the 5 songs on the EP are the order that the 5 songs were written in, and when we met up to write them, we didn't really go, oh, let's do something like this. We kind of had we maybe didn't. We had a short conversation about kind of the sonic of it and stuff, but it wasn't really like something that we'd planned out loads. So again, we'd left loads of room for like maneuver and arrangement and stuff to be done actually in the studio. And I think it's nice that, and I think it's a sort of testament to how we work together, that it kind of turned out in such a sort of cohesive and interesting way, even though it wasn't really planned. It was just kind of became a sort of amalgamation of the things that we're both into, even though those things can be quite disparate at times.
I mean, it's fascinating that it was chronological, like the way that the track is listed. It was structured in that way because Want to Know feels like such a kind of perfect opener to it, and Clean Living is this kind of grandiose, finishing piece, this conclusion to it.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, because I just remember feeling really strongly about that. That if we just keep it the order we wrote it, you can kind of hear the progression, I think, of it just building through.
Yeah, it was funny because I think you'd kind of put it together, like the sequence, and then after you'd put it together, we were like, oh, that's the order that we wrote them in. That's kind of weird. I think it's quite cool because you can kind of hear us becoming a sort of more distilled version of Slow Weather as the EP goes on, I think. So by like Clean Living, it's like it's taken on this new life, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you can see by the time you get to Clean Living, there are kind of elements of the other songs that carry through into it as well. Like it's kind of almost an amalgamation of a lot of the stuff that's come before it.
I think by that point it feels kind of together and it very much its own thing.
I think as well, though, I know you were saying before that you don't think of the EP as like an intense listen, but I mean the end of Clean Living, that song when it kind of builds is quite sinister. Where it keeps building and building, and it's how could I let this happen to us?
Yeah.
Oh, just over and over again. How did that ending kind of build in the studio? What was the kind of process for that forming?
We wanted a big long ending thing because when we wrote the song, we just ended up jamming on that bit for ages, and we thought, you know what, this is actually just really cool. And then I think in the studio, it's like, I think we layered your voice about 8 times or something like that. Annie, I can't remember. I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah, I think I've said this before, but that was definitely the coven. I think you were calling it. It was the witchy voices coming out.
Yeah.
So is that just Annie? Is that just you singing on the end of it, or Chris, are your vocals?
I'm kind of
in there as
underneath.
well?
Chris comes in, sort of maybe like a quarter of the way in or something.
Yeah, I'm buried in there, but yeah, I'm in there somewhere, I think.
That's one of the things I really like about it, though, is that the vocals kind of merge with each other a lot of the time across it. And sometimes you're kind of left trying to work out whether the vocals are just layered or whether both of you are singing or what's kind of going on.
Nice.
And it gives it a kind of a cool personality about it.
Yeah, because we'd never really sang together before or anything. We just kind of sort of got on well and then decided to write some songs together. It's kind of just a happy accident that our voices work together.
Yeah, and I think another thing that just while we're talking about it, I think the EP is still pretty raw. Sorry, I know that's a really overused term, but I think it still is quite, it's not like immaculate and perfect and poppy, but I think that's kind of what we're both about. I think as long as the feeling of the song is there and the sort of mood and feeling of what we're trying to get across is there, I think that's kind of what's important to me, and I imagine what's kind of important to Chris. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think I remember one of the things we both agreed on before we went into the studio is that we wanted it to sound organic. My favorite, anything that any music that has sort of electronic elements to it, to me, is only interesting if it sounds organic
or human. Like if you hear a synth part or something and you're like, a human could sing that.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, and I think it is quite. Yeah, it's just it's super raw. It's super organic sounding. It's not like overproduced or anything. Yeah, I can't even imagine what it would sound like overproduced. I don't know. I mean, it's not really the kind of thing that either of us are really into anyway, is it?
No.
I think we both like bands that are very. I think we probably spoke about this the other week, man. But like things that are just kind of very much in their own wee world, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we wanted to kind of build that for ourselves. And part of that for us was making things sound organic and quite natural.
I mean, it's interesting what you were saying there as well about, electronic music that sounds organic. What sort of examples and things were you kind of referencing when you were having discussions about that and wanting the electronic stuff on it to sound organic?
I really like a lot of like the early kind of synth stuff, or like the kind of krautrock bands that would use synths, like Harmonia. Oh, there goes my voice again. Hold on, I'm just gonna have a sip of tea.
I think
It's the
Brian
puberty
Eno
place.
was in there. He was brought up, I think.
Yeah, Eno's synths always sound, whether it's the ambient stuff or his own stuff, they always sound kind of lush and organic. They sound like they sound like they've been like grown in a forest and plucked off a tree and then recorded. God, that was pretentious, but that's how
Nah,
that's how I was
grand,
thinking.
accurate,
you're
though.
grand.
Yeah, so like, or even like more like I really loved the third Portishead album. I thought was amazing, and that was quite lo-fi. Had tons of electronics on it and programming, but was really really organic sounding. Yeah, like Brian Eno and Jeff Barrow are two producers in particular that do a lot of electronic things, but have it retain a kind of really natural quality.
I don't know if this crosses over to you, Chris, but I also quite like sort of Aphex Twin, Radiohead / Tommy York kind of stuff. And I'm not like a super fan in that, I can't name every song, and I wouldn't say I was a big Radiohead fan in sense of knowledge, but I think I also quite like how a lot of the ways that the stuff's being produced is really odd, or really kind of scratchy, and kind of human. The voice is well supported by the electronic production or the synths. I think that can be really cool. Or if it's just very ambient and kind of you can kind of lose yourself in it. I think I'm kind of attracted to stuff like that. I think it's really judgmental of me, but I think a lot of chart stuff just really makes me quite disinterested quite quickly if it's just very blocky, and you can almost imagine someone copying pasting on the grid over and over. I think that's what kind of stops me from enjoying some stuff nowadays.
Yeah. So the end of Clean Living, just to clarify, there's absolutely no copying and pasting there. I think, Annie, you sang through all of that at least 8 times, probably more. Yeah, I think that Radiohead album, Moon-Shaped Pool, I thought, now that you've said that, like, I thought that was a really cool record for having a lot of electronic elements but still retaining the feel of like 5, or I don't know how many people are in the band, 5 people playing in a room together.
It's got a really cool atmosphere about it, that record. Like, it's got a very distinct kind of tone and feel to it.
First listened to it in the best possible setting for it. Like, I listened to it, I'd rented it, I was in Iceland and I'd rented a car. My girlfriend and I at the time drove like right out into the middle of nowhere and just had that album on. It was incredible.
That's the way to listen to it.
Yeah, because it just came out and I think she'd downloaded it or something, and I'd not, because I wanted to like sit and listen to it properly, and I was like, no, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. So, kind of good memories for me, that record.
Quite an intense listening experience, though.
Yeah, perfect setting.
Do you remember the first time you heard the Slow Weather EP once you'd finished it from start to finish and you kind of sat down and listened to it?
Yeah, it'd be great to hear where you were, Chris, because I can remember like where I was when I did that and just being like, yeah, and just like a feeling of it's finally there. But I just had some sort of cheap, rubbishy headphones on, which I think I then swapped to better ones, and then was just sitting by the window, and I could just hear it. Like, it was definitely just at the best point it could have been so far, and just a feeling of like relief where I was like, I think we've kind of done what we wanted to do. And I think every time I listen to it now, like it's nice because I can still hear things I could have done better, etc. But like, I'm still happy with it, which is not the case for some other things I've done. So, but yeah, it'd be good to hear what you remember, Chris, when you listen to it.
I have two, like, there was one time I'm sure me, you, and Ailish sat and listened to it when we'd finished mixing it, and it was the 3 of us, and we were sitting in my living room, and we just played through it. And remember that being like, oh yeah, this is cool. Because it's really hard when you're like in the midst of, because remember we were doing like the last few overdubs and then kind of mixing it, and then when you finally sit down and like take a step back and play it, I remember being like, yeah, this is cool at that moment, and then I remember, yeah, sticking the test pressing on as well and just sitting down and playing it cover to cover, and yeah, that was cool.
How's it split on the record? What's on each side?
So I think it's the first 3 tracks, and then I think it starts with Lisbon into Clean Living, because Clean Living is really long. I think that's the split.
I guess you've kind of got that natural close it to side A then with Great White Male. Like it's kind of it's almost like the centerpiece of the EP. Like it feels quite nicely positioned right in the middle of it.
Nice.
It's an interesting one, Great White Male, because you see that title, you kind of think of like connotations of toxic masculinity and that kind of, for lack of a better description, Joe Rogan kind of bro culture. But it feels more, it's kind of more like introspective and self-deprecating. Was that quite a personal autobiographical song, or was that written from like the point of view of a character, or what was the kind of narrative of that track?
Yeah, it was a wee bit autobiographical, I suppose, or a little bit. It kind of took its cue from that feeling dissatisfied with what you've done artistically, but feeling, you can, it's quite easy to get sucked into some kind of like entitled mindset, and it's quite easy to forget why you do it, why you make music or art in the first place. And I think it's important to always remember why you do it, or to keep that original motivation close, I think, because it's very, very, very easy to lose it, especially if you get sucked into any kind of industry side of things, or money gets involved and stuff like that. It can quickly kind of become soul destroying, and ego can get in the way. But I really I've just kind of came full circle with all that stuff, and I've really kind of got to the point where, again, I'm sure we spoke about this, is there's really no point in doing it for me unless it's for me, unless it's something that I'm actually enjoying and it feels real.
You can read it as autobiographical. I think we've all got that sort of darker, more bitter sides to us, but I think you could also read it as maybe a character study as well, like an exaggerated kind of caricature of someone like that who is literally like, yeah, you owe me this, you owe me that achievement. I basically expect all this stuff, and I don't really care what I need to do to get it. That's kind of what I had in my mind. Everyone is capable of being like that, which is a bit scary, but I think there are people out there who are genuinely like that, which is a bit terrifying, and don't have any awareness that they're like that either.
Yeah, I mean, it does, like what you're saying there about it being a character study. It does have, it's almost like the perspective of it is a little bit objective. It's almost like an out of body experience, like the kind of perspective of the songwriter in it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, or even just maybe this is through a lot of the EP, but even just the thoughts of the person milling around without a lot of structure, just without it being filtered or prettied up. It's kind of just this person being like, yeah, this is kind of who I am, what I'm about, I'm better, this is what I want. And yeah, I can, quite a sinister undertone to that. I think I remember, Chris, with the production, it's like we were trying to get that kind of sinister but slightly black humor thing out of it.
Yeah, I think the whole like solo section's a bit tongue in cheek, isn't it? It's kind of the way it kind of turns around like that, and with the la la las and stuff. It's a bit like silly, but in a good way.
It comes back to that idea of the no and wink that we spoke about last time.
Yeah, it's a total like Catholic action thing, isn't it? Like kind of a bit of fun in there.
How did that work for you guys then? Because like what we were saying there about that no and wink being this like kind of Catholic action thing, you both have incredibly kind of distinct personalities. We were speaking about Worlds earlier when it comes to your own separate projects. Were there any challenges when it came to kind of melding those personalities together for this project? Those musical personalities?
I wouldn't say massively. I think we kind of, in terms of like lyric writing, for example, when we were just writing the songs, I thought we balanced each other out quite nicely, because I would kind of tend to more like lean on things like turns of phrase and things that just sound cool to me, and he's really good at fitting that kind of thing into a narrative that makes sense, whereas I'm just not. I'd quite happily make a song that doesn't really make sense to anyone but me, because it sounds cool or just as a series of sort of cool images. Whereas I feel you were kind of a lot more narrative focused, and it kind of brought out it like I think we balanced each other out really nicely in that way.
Yeah, it felt very pretty like really easy at the time, to be honest. And given we'd never written together like that, sometimes it would even be like line by line, like one person would write a line followed by the other. Another thing as well is, yeah, I think I am slightly more narrative focused, even if it's subconscious, but even just having phrases that are maybe a bit like say like want to know, for example, just repeating that over and over is not the most profound thing, but it can become profound depending on like, you know, how the person's feeling when they're listening to it, or what you kind of get from it. It's like trying to combine, yeah, more specific sentiment with like a slightly more universal thing as well. I think some of my favorite music is a mixture of the two, like really specific, but you know, it could open up to be about anything.
And the thing with repeating that line as well, like you're saying there, is as you repeat it and as you keep doing it, the kind of emotion of it changes. Like you start to feel something different as it goes on and on, which is what's interesting about it.
That's cool.
It's another like total Brian Eno thing. He always talks about, you know, people complain about repetition or whatever in music. It's that actually, well, you hear the repetition from a different perspective every time you hear it. So it is different. You experience it differently as it goes on. So I think that's why that section works.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's always really important to follow the song. So whatever it sounds weird, but whatever the song needs, rather than does this sound like me? Do I sound cool enough? I think it should always be about respecting the mood of the song, or just going with the atmosphere of it, whether that is a lyrical thing or repeating a sonic idea that just takes on more meaning as it keeps going.
And it's also really good if you're lazy.
Gotta get those hooks, those pop hooks.
There was always an element of, oh yeah, we should let's get the song finished so we can go and have a pint before one of us has to get a train home. Yeah, we were pretty we were very efficient with the songwriting on this. We wrote really quickly.
Yeah, and it wasn't like how I'd write on my own at all. I think if I'm on my own, I can either write a song really quickly in terms of maybe like in less than an hour, or it will take me like months on and off and I'll just agonize over it. Whereas I think these were sort of like just sat down, like a few hours, kind of just back and forth until it felt done.
It happened every time.
Why do you think that was? Why do you think you were able to kind of get it done in a few hours as opposed to spending months agonizing over it?
I think it's because we balance each other out. Like, I think whenever one of us would go into that, you know, agonizing mode, the other one would snap us out of it, and vice versa. And also, there wasn't really like, it's not like we had any kind of expectations or like stylistic limitations either. We just kind of met up and wrote songs. There wasn't really that much thought put into it.
Yeah, and I don't even remember thinking, oh, we can finish this later or something. It was just sort of enjoying the process. I think I just really enjoyed writing those songs, so it didn't feel like a deadline or anything like that.
Was there anything from working on this project and kind of having that slightly different process that then carried back into your own separate songwriting when you went back to that? Did you kind of learn anything from it that you could carry over?
I've learned a lot from Chris, like huge amounts. Different ways to approach songwriting or production stuff, or even just all the like musical influences I've kind of nicked off him that I didn't have before meeting him. I've kind of shamelessly tried to incorporate a lot of bands like that into my most recent songwriting. Like I've really been trying to push myself. So I think I've taken a lot from this experience.
Yeah, me too. Like I think whenever I write a song now, I think, does it actually make sense? Like if someone was, do these words just sound cool when I sing them, or do they actually make sense? That's just something I've picked up from this. And also the confidence to work really quickly again. Because I used to work so quickly when I was younger. Maybe the last few years on my own stuff, I've slowed right down and thought about things maybe too much, and this kind of snapped me out of that a bit.
Which song on the EP do you think the collaboration works best on? And that idea of the songwriting, you kind of gelling together and pulling each other up.
In terms of the narrative one, definitely for me, probably Great White Male. I think Annie really had a big part in making that make sense, whereas I was just kind of firing off lines that sounded cool, as opposed to like a narrative.
I'm kind of fond of a few of them in different ways. Like, I think Want to Know will always be kind of cool to me because it was the first song we wrote. I just remember Chris handing me, was it an omnichord, Chris? That
Yeah,
really cool wee instrument, and I just remember doing some chords because I just remember it was really nice to play and I had no idea what I was doing. So I was just sort of playing it and coming up with a chord progression thing on it. Yes, started singing Want to Know over that, and then we just started writing from there. So I just think it came really nicely together on that one. I think Lisbon as well is another song on the record, and I think that one, I think lyrically, I quite like it because it I think it's quite understated. Again, it's quite a repeating chorus, but the themes that I had in mind when we were writing it, I think hopefully will kind of resonate with people. And it's quite an emotionally, resonant kind of song.
I got quite emotional when I heard that back on the test press, and I think your vocals are so good on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it just really touched a nerve when I listened back to that originally on the test pressing.
Thank you.
I think it really strikes as well because it's one of the few moments on the EP when it's not the two of you singing, it is just Annie. And it kind of stands out as a result of that.
Yeah, I think that was like maybe a studio decision as well. I think for most of the record we've been singing on all of it, but yeah, I think there it kind of seemed to make sense. But yeah, I'm also just glad, just as a side note, that you've said nice things about it. So thank you, because it's nice that it's kind of weird and nice that people are actually hearing it now. Because we did this quite a long time ago, it's just it's a good feeling.
When did you record this?
2001.
That's the year I was born.
What?
I'm not joking.
Damn. Yeah, we done it probably finished mixing it and stuff probably about last, I don't know, October or September or something. We done it last May, and it was just because of the release schedule that we had to wait, but we were kind of happy to do that because, it was, obviously coming out on 12-inch vinyl and stuff, so I mean, it was a very nice bonus that we were happy to wait for, kind of thing.
Some of the vinyl sold out as well, hasn't it? Like the kind of special print of it.
Yeah, it's quite cool. Very cool. It's like, the kind of translucent-y. I've not actually seen that version in the flesh. Is it you? Have you got one, Annie?
Did you not get one in the end?
I just asked for a sort of regular black one.
I'll need to bring mine next week. But I'm quite glad we went for that kind of color. I mean, it's kind of a color, it's translucent, but yeah, I think it fits quite well with the artwork. I was really pleased with how it came out. It's nice that anyone is actually buying it. I feel like that with anything I do. It's always a really good feeling, and I try not to take it for granted, because if anyone likes it, it means that, there's kind of a point to it. It's not just kind of indulgent. I mean, I think writing should always be good for the person who's writing. I think it's a really therapeutic, good way of expressing yourself, but I just think it always makes so much more sense if someone in the real world is actually connected to it or enjoyed it. I think it feels a lot more real and tangible.
Yeah, it makes you feel like a human being, doesn't it? You're like, oh, people are sharing in what we've been feeling, kind of thing.
Did you notice anything about the record when you heard it on vinyl, or the music rather?
I mean, I was really happy with how it turned out on the vinyl, but we kind of always had it in mind that we wanted to make it like that. Again, like we spoke about the other week with the Catholic Action stuff, it was like we very much wanted to make something that was just kind of worked as a full thing, and we always intended or hoped that we could get someone to press it up for us.
Apologies if this is slightly negative, but I think on the other hand, anytime I hear anything I've been on, I also can always hear what I could have done better or sung or played better. And I don't know if that's just sort of a pessimistic outlook, but I'm always really acutely aware of if a note's not quite right, or if I'm just, but then I guess that just makes you want to get it more right on the next thing. I don't know if that's just being, I don't know what you feel about that, Chris.
No, I'm totally the same. There's a few bits where I'm like, oh, I could have definitely sung that better, but I think in the moment it was obviously right for us, and I think it's a really healthy thing to do as a musician. It's a really healthy thing, sorry, to be able to let go of stuff. Like to be able to go, do you know what? Actually, that is fine. That was right in the moment, and there's obviously some kind of merit to that. And I was really, like I was saying earlier, I'm really bad for it, or certainly was really bad for getting too perfectionist about it. And I think that's a real danger in being able to know how to record and having the equipment in your home. You know, you don't really have a time limit.
And sometimes something that you think is like really offensive to yourself, something that makes you cringe about what you've done, will not make like a lot of other people feel like that, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, I remember bits that you were like, oh, I'm not doing this well enough, and me being like, well, maybe we're all quite acutely aware of our own flaws and our own shortcomings.
Yeah, when to everyone else it sounds fine. I mean, that was again, I think something that we really got from this project is like, well, we were working together. It was that, you know, you really kept things moving. Like when one of us would get into that kind of, oh, is this good enough or is this right? It's great to have the other person to bounce off of, you know, someone that you trust, to just be like, it's totally fine, and then, you know, you put the issue to bed, kind of thing. And I guess that's part, you know, listening to it now or whatever, and if there was a bit that you're like, oh, I could have sang that better or whatever, it's kind of, I mean, I guess that's part and parcel of us wanting to make something that was human sounding. I mean, I guess it wouldn't really be human sounding if we were like Steely Dan levels of perfection, or like super modern pop, kind of like McDonald's music.
McDonald's music, yes.
It's what I call it now, like that just kind of chart music, because you go into McDonald's. I quite often get a McDonald's breakfast if I'm working at Chem 19, because there's one really conveniently located, and it gives me a good motivation to get out of bed. So I'll get my egg McMuffin, and I mean, I haven't been sitting in for a while, obviously because of the Rona, but you know, you sit and you like listen to like 3 or 4 songs in a row, and you're just like, is this the same person? It's probably the same songwriters, same team of songwriters, probably very similar producers, and it's so soulless. It's just like hyper capitalist music, and it's just really, really, really overdone to the point of it just kind of sounds like, I don't know, you can just imagine it all being like,
and
done by
anyone
holograms.
could have sung it as well. Like, they're just throwing these songs around. I mean, it's probably a sign that it's like an efficiently made kind of industrial thing, but it's just any number of people could have sung on it. And I think that as well, it's just the throwing it around without it being about the artist as much.
The major label industrial complex.
That's the name of the album. The next album.
Yeah, like you say though, I think there is something weirdly interesting about this idea of the perfect pop song, and something that's kind of perfectly structured and it's perfectly produced and the melodies sound perfect. And it does get to that point where it's weirdly not human, but there is still something about it that's oddly interesting. And I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Maybe it's like an uncanny valley thing. You're like, is this an AI or is it Billie Eilish?
I like Billie Eilish.
Something like that.
Their stuff, their stuff is like, yeah, kind of interesting.
I don't dislike Billie Eilish. That was just the one that, okay, well, Sam Smith, someone like that.
Yeah,
there was definitely elements of Billie Eilish that I couldn't listen to the whole album, but there was like some, obviously, like you have to respect what they're doing and stuff. But you know what I mean? I'm just like generic. I'm trying to think of music that's on quite regularly.
I think some of the stuff they do is really inventive though, like the kind of production techniques. I've watched quite a few videos with him, and the stuff they do where they like sample like road traffic noises and like use matches as a snare sound and stuff, and kind of just working in all these weird.
Is that the Pitchfork video?
There is a Pitchfork one, where he speaks about the matches. There's another one where they're in his house and stuff as well. Yeah,
no, maybe Billie Eilish was a terrible example. I'm sorry, because
it was like the most indie creative pop person.
Halsey.
I know exactly.
There's one.
I'm sure there are definitely some, you know, there's definitely been a team of people at major labels around the world over the past like year or two since she's came out, trying to design an AI that makes music that's almost identical but isn't so identical that you get sued for it.
That's the thing though, whenever something like this comes along, there's always a bunch of weird kind of major label knockoffs that are, but it's weird to think that these artists are people. Like they're not like an AI thing. They're actually people that are living lives, but it just sounds so oddly like false and artificial.
Like it's not like you're buying off-brand cereal. Like this is a person with hopes and dreams.
So see, you know how because we're on like like a really small indie label. Does that make us like the equivalent of like, are we like Aldi music? Are we like at like Lidl rock kind of thing?
Lidl? Do you say Lidl? I've always
Yeah.
been a little person.
I always get into people always pick up on that. I say Lidl and I say Aldi, and I say Primark. Do you say Primark?
I think it's Primark, isn't it?
See, I don't know. Where I'm from, I say Primark and Lidl.
It's like Bowie or Bowie, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I say Annie. You say Bowie. I've noticed that. I noticed that you say
I think it's
Bowie.
because I said Bowie for a long time, and my dad always said Bowie, and then I think I saw in an interview somewhere that he says his name Bowie. So then it's the same with like Aldous Harding. I think I keep getting her name wrong. I think it might actually be Aldous, but maybe it's like an Aldi, Little Lidl situation. I don't know.
I think I'm the same as you, though. I used to say Bowie, and then when I saw him saying it Bowie, I started saying Bowie. But then I know people with the same last name up back in Aberdeen who I would say Bowie, but because that's how they pronounce it. I think I just go with how the person says it.
I used to say Chris McCrory, but now I just say Chris McCrory because that's more right.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's actually Christ. My name is actually Christ.
There's a line in Great White Male I wanted to pick up on, actually. It puts the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again. How long had you been wanting to transplant that phrase into a song for?
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. You're one of only there's a small elite club of people that have got that reference, and you're now one of them. I'm amazed that more people haven't picked up on it.
I think that's pretty in the culture, isn't it?
I know, well, that's what I thought.
Didn't Family Guy do a riff on it as well?
Probably. Sure, South Park did as well.
Are you listening out for things like that though? Like, when did you think I want to put that in a song? That phrase from that film
It just popped in when we were writing it. I think there wasn't really, again, there wasn't like any conscious thought about it. It was more like it was just, oh, that sounds cool, and it kind of works with what we're saying. It was approved by Annie. You know.
That, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, barely. At the time I was like, what the hell? But no, I'm really glad that you came up with it. And I also really like the title Great White Male. That was a Chris creation. I think it's quite clever.
Has that been used anywhere else?
I've not seen it anywhere else. I mean, probably because it's the whole internet, so maybe.
It feels like one of those perfect phrases though that you think this must have been used somewhere, then when you look it up you can't find anything about it. Like one of those ideas that you think someone else must have thought of this, but they haven't.
Yeah, well, that's what we thought with the band name. We just kind of came up with it, and then we thought, oh no, surely there must be another band called this. And I don't think there is, because we had a couple of other names initially, but I'm kind of glad we didn't go with those. We didn't have a name for fucking ages.
Oh, it took so long.
I was always of the belief that it will just come to you eventually. Like, so I would never, like, you kind of wanted to think of a band name, and I was never like, no, I don't want to actively think of one. It will just pop in to our heads at some point, and it did eventually. It just took forever.
What were those other names you had at the start?
Make America Great Again. That was one. I know you were really big on that, Annie, but I said it probably wouldn't fly. No, that's
2001 Space Odyssey, like / my birthday.
Yeah.
That was another good one. That was a reference to the 2001 joke earlier, by the way. I'm sorry for all the bad banter.
I can't even remember. I think we were going to call ourselves after an Aldous Harding song as well, and then we thought, nah, we can't do that. It's too soon.
Yeah, I was kind of like, we're both quite big fans of her, so I was like, let's keep it fresh, keep it original.
I don't know if that's too soon. If you think like Radiohead are named after a Talking Heads song, that must have been within 10 years of that song coming out, right?
Yeah, but ours would have been within 2 years if we thought of that.
Yeah, I guess it's a wee bit.
I mean, that's the thing, is we could always use thing we were thinking. We could always use it another time where, Chris, you could use it for something, because I think it was cool. But I think weirdly, Slow Weather just, it was a moment of like, right, that definitely makes sense. That works. And it had taken so many months up to that point that I don't know why it felt so natural after all the band names that were rejected.
We had faith in the process, and the name came to us after a long wait.
Had you already kind of mapped out what you wanted the soundscape of it to be? Because it feels like it really suits the atmosphere of the band.
Well, I mean, we didn't have the name till after everything was recorded.
That makes sense then, yeah, because it kind of feels like it comes out of that.
Really bad for this. I didn't decide on the name Catholic Action until I was on the phone with a promoter and he wanted to print a poster, so I had to tell him what the name of the band was, and I decided sort of there and then on the spot. No, in fact, no, I decided another name, and then 2 minutes later I called him back and said, no, this is the name of the band.
What was the other name?
Ugh, it was, I don't even want to say it, it was crap.
It was
The Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid.
Was it actually?
No, I'm looking.
So, was this project started before or after Annie, your last EP? Because you worked on that together, right?
Yeah, this was actually after, because when we were working on that EP, I think we got on quite well and just floated the idea of maybe writing something at some point. I don't think we'd ever planned on doing an entire record. I mean, I'm glad we did, but it was just a sort of, oh, well, next time you're in Glasgow kind of thing, we'll maybe do some writing. Because the EP was also, it was very different, but it was really fun to do, and very, a lot of the stuff for it I'd written really last minute right before, so I didn't really have any, I had a rough idea of how I wanted it to sound, but I wasn't like, it needs to sound exactly like this with these exact elements. It was quite experimental, so I think that works quite well. But yeah, then we sort of agreed to meet up and write after that.
Did the dynamic feel quite different when it was working on Slow Weather as opposed to your EP? Like the energy in the room?
Yeah, in a good way though. It was just different in a good way, because I enjoyed both experiences, but I think the Slow Weather one, we've discussed this before, but it was just we didn't have any prescribed, this needs to be done by this certain point and this needs to sound like this, and it was very much just hopefully a good amalgam of both our styles and processes. And yeah, I just remember getting on the train after the first writing session and listening to the first song we'd done and just feeling quite excited about it.
So that first song was Want to Know.
Yeah.
How many songs did you write for this? Was it just the 5, or did you have more to kind of choose from and narrow it down a wee bit?
I think it really was just the 5. I think we just wrote enough, and then we just decided, oh, let's just go and record this now. This seems like a good amount. There really wasn't a lot of putting loads together and then planning things. It was just, yeah, this just feels right, let's just do it.
It's very efficient.
Yeah, it was super duper efficient. The studio sessions themselves were like, for the Slow Weather stuff, were more intense. I was like engineering and playing on it, as opposed to like just engineering and producing kind of thing.
Yeah, and I really don't consider myself a keys player, and I just remember playing a lot of keys on it, which was quite weird. Like, do you remember the piano, Chris, at the studio, just trying to get like one take, but just trying it over and over and over till it got that kind of repetitive riff, and then
right feel,
yeah, just other bits of the EP where weirdly I just thought I'll try and do some little riff writing for this. But yeah, it was challenging, because I think first and foremost I try and be like a songwriter / singer, so I think sometimes instrumental stuff can be challenging for me, but I think that's the only way to get better, is to just put yourself in situations where you're slightly outside your comfort zone. Like, sometimes it can make you feel really really panicky and really like you don't know what you're doing, but I think it's always worth it. It's always worth it to just push yourself.
Yeah, it's worth it in the end. Like, even in the moment it can be like difficult, or I can just be being a grumpy dick about it. Because you know that like the idea is there and the songs are good enough. You just need to push yourself until you get that moment where it just clicks and you know it's right.
Comes back to it feeling organic again, though. Like that idea of having to kind of work at it and get it right.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like a heavy editing thing at all. It really was just kind of playing it, singing it till it was right. Again, like we spent proper time on it, but it wasn't like a crazy amount of time. I mean, we really did, like, we wrote all of the songs. Like, we'd meet up, we'd hang out for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, and then we'd go to the pub. And because we always did it. We met up 5 times, and each time we wrote a song in a few hours, and then we went to the pub. The recording itself, yeah, we worked hard on it, but we didn't. It's not like we spent months on it or anything. It really was those 10 days and then a few days at mine to do a couple more overdubs and then mix it. It wasn't really like, it wasn't super laborious. It was just sort of hard work at the time, but it wasn't.
There's a lot of good food places around that bit. A lot of good. I think there was some good Turkish food. Am I making that up? There was Turkish
Yeah, there was
food
loads of
and
really good Turkish places.
had some really good pad thai, being all hipster. But yeah, that's one of my main memories from that that time was the food.
Yeah, good food and beer and smoking in the park.
As you got to know each other better, through the process of writing these songs and then working on them in the studio and stuff, how did that bleed into the music and impact the kind of songwriting itself?
Because we've been friends for a wee while now, it sort of does help. The more you trust the other person, if they're like, try it like in that way, and if initially you're like, I don't see how it would work in that way, but okay, I'll give it a go, then when it inevitably does work, it kind of makes you go, right, I thought about this in a different way, and it worked. The other person's idea was really good. So I think the more you kind of trust the other person, you can end up with quite cool effects, or even just I think Chris has done a lot of good stuff, but for me it was a really fun process, and maybe a slightly less like serious process in terms of the tone and themes of the music. I think there's still a kind of a dark feeling to a lot of the EP, but I think there's a lot of fun and levity as well, and I think some of my other stuff can just be quite depressing. Yeah, it was kind of just trusting the other person and their ideas was really good for me.
Yeah, I'd say the same. It's just nice. It was just nice to be in a position where you just trust someone musically, because the older I've got, the more experience I've got, the more you come to kind of cherish those kind of relationships, because they're a lot rarer than you think. You can't just sit down and write a song with anyone. It doesn't always work like that. You have to. I don't know. Like, I mean, you could probably force something out, but it might not be that good. Whereas it is actually quite rare to meet someone that you can kind of honestly back things back and forth and be open and honest about what you actually think about it, and not, hurt someone's feelings or whatever. Like, that's. But you have to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean? If you're working together, it has to be like a collaborative effort where you feel like you can say that you don't like something, or vice versa, and it not to end up in a fight. And that is a lot rarer than you think.
Yeah, and it's not always plain sailing. Like, obviously there have been challenging moments, but I think, like you say, if overall you've got a vision for the whole thing, and an idea of, oh, this is going to kind of work. And in a weird way, sometimes if you're in a band of a lot of people, that's a lot of different opinions and ideas. And yeah, that can lead to something really cool. But sometimes if it's only two people, it can maybe be slightly more cohesive in the final idea. I don't know what you guys think, but just it's actually maybe easier in a way.
Yeah, definitely. Because I don't think you can make. I sometimes think with some bands, it can be too much like a committee, and things get watered down. Sometimes some committees are better than others. Do you know what I mean? Like, some bands, well, again, let's talk about Radiohead. They're obviously, as a collective of 5 people, they just work amazingly well together, and they balance each other out, and they accentuate each other's, strengths. Some bands there might be like a band leader and then more of a backing band kind of situation, and some bands are kind of a mix of both. But no, again, it's just like, it's actually, I think I've found it to be a very rare thing for me, and maybe it's just because I am kind of a slightly awkward guy in some respects, and I'm quite shy in some respects too. I don't always find people that I can just click with musically.
Yeah, and Chris, when you met me, you were like, "Wow, she's ice cool. She's just the coolest cat I've ever met." Like,
ice
so
cool.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
We just got on. I thought we just got on. We kind of got on, not only musically but as people. And again, like, it's a rare thing for me, I think, to just click with people musically. Not in a production sense. Like, I can go in and produce with anyone really, but it's different if it's like. But I find it rare to meet people that I can be really collaborative with.
Yeah, that's really kind to say that.
I can collaborate with anyone production-wise or recording-wise, I would say, or most people probably, if it's stuff that I'm into. But yeah, songwriting-wise, you have to, because it's much more personal. It's just rarer, you know.
Do you think some people maybe struggle to understand that a wee bit, that idea that you can't always work, not everyone, works together? Because I often think about that when I hear, two different bands speak about the same producer, and one band will absolutely rave about the experience and the other won't have enjoyed it. Do people struggle to maybe get that a wee bit, that idea that you can't work with everyone in a songwriting sense?
Yeah, I think it can take years to work that out, and I think it often is about what's the best fit, and I don't even think it's about the perfect fit. I think it's about what makes the most sense, and where the kind of most interesting moments come from. It's not like saying other producers or other experiences are necessarily bad, but it's just about like a good combo of personality and work ethic, but it's also pros and cons. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be absolutely 100% agreeing on everything, because that's not a creative process. You're always going to disagree on some things, but if you agree on the most important things, I think that that really 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 helps. And often, like, occasionally I've been in the position where it's been slightly more difficult, or just not quite right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's like relationship, a creative relationship, in that it's almost how well you handle conflict. That's a huge impactor on whether or not something works. It's like, it's not whether or not you have an argument. It's like how well you can resolve an argument. That keeps a collaborative situation healthy, because you need it. You need to, like, you don't want to be in a band or write songs for people that just either agree with everything you say, or you feel that you're walking on eggshells with, because it's just not healthy. And again, it's like, I've learned that from experience. Like, the older I've got, the more I'm like, actually, it's pretty rare for me to in a songwriting capacity to meet people that I feel that I can be like that with, and I can definitely be like that with you. And I don't feel that like I'd have to, like, not say something.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely more worthwhile to sort of be honest about the stuff, because you're never going to regret that honesty. I think it will always lead to a better, or at least or more honest experience. I will say that for the recording stuff I've done, though, like, thinking about it, I mean, I've been quite lucky in a lot of the experiences I've had, where I've worked with people I really like, that have it's kind of worked in that situation. But I think it can also depend on what role you're in. I think, because I've been a backing vocalist in another band I'm in. I mean, that's just a completely different process, because I don't expect to, like, lead that situation. That's just not the role that I have there. But if it's just my solo stuff, it's completely different to that kind of thing. And then Slow Weather was just somewhere in the middle, where we were both kind of just equally trying to agree things. Obviously, Chris was the producer, so he was, producing the bulk of it. But yeah, just we were trying to, like, both agree on things. So that was just quite a different approach.
It was interesting as well how you mentioned about conflict there, Chris, and how it's about how you handle conflict. Do the pair of you, do you both handle conflict in quite a similar way, or do you have quite different approaches to it?
It really depends. Like depends how tired we both are. Like, I think we probably handle it fairly similarly. It's like something you feel really personal about and close to, but then also you wouldn't want to be a dick about it either. I think so. I think we obviously do, because obviously we've worked together a lot now, and we're both really proud of the records that we've done. So, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely be oversensitive, and I can be I can be closed in some ways, where I won't let an idea go. So if I've got an idea of something I want in my head, occasionally I'll be like, oh, but I like it this way. And sometimes sometimes I do prefer it the way I had in my head, and other times I'm wrong. So it's just trying to be aware of my own flaws, the things that are maybe kind of not particularly helpful. But I think everybody's got those. So it's just trying to remember that sometimes it's just, yeah, like you're a bit tired, or you're just frustrated by your own limitations. It's not, I think that's one thing I try and remember, and sometimes I fail at it, but it's not always just that the situation is so-called bad. Like sometimes it can just be the mindset you're in, and other times it can just be the combination of personalities in the room that maybe just isn't working. Like it's not necessarily like one of the two people is absolutely wrong or right. There's so many different factors to remember, and that kind of keeps you sane when you come away from a practice or a recording session. You can kind of remember that, yeah, at the end of the day, you're just trying to keep hold of all those factors.
Yeah, I think as long as you're, at the end of the day, like as long as you're both pulling in the same direction and you both have the same goal in mind, then you can kind of get through it, and you believe in the goal kind of thing, and you believe in the songs and things like that.